My name is Lou Jogman, and I'm the current president for the Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police and also chief of police for the city of Highland Park, Illinois.
So to start, could you tell me a little bit about your law enforcement journey?
Yeah, I can actually. It's been a passion of mine since I was a young boy to become a police officer, and I can tell you why. My father was a police officer. So as it happens, I think in the police service and fire service, I think a lot of us are introduced to a life of service through our parents or maybe a loved one. My dad was a police officer in Tinley Park, Illinois, and in 1977, when I was 7 years old, he responded to an armed robbery in progress in town, and ultimately got to the scene, and it was a legitimate armed robbery where the offender had the gun to the head of the clerk, female clerk. So my dad, not having a lot of options, exchanged himself for that clerk and was handcuffed, face down, and taunted, and ultimately shot in the head by the suspect. He lived. Shockingly, Michael, he lived. And if you didn't know my dad before or after, and if you didn't see all the scarring and everything, I mean, he could walk, talk, drive a car. I mean, he was a miracle. He was in a coma for 6 months and surgeries. There were tons of those and rehab. But we were fortunate to have my father. And unfortunately, in our business, there are way too many families who aren't as fortunate, and their loved ones are taken from them. So for me, it served to really expose me to law enforcement a little more in detail. I had a lot of time to spend with him because he wasn't working as a police officer clearly anymore. And I really got to know, the good, the bad, the ugly of law enforcement. And, I decided early on that I wanted to carry. He ultimately died when I was 16, unfortunately, from complications and things. But, I ultimately decided that I wanted to carry on that tradition and really wanted to devote myself to a life of service. And I learned from my father just what that really, really means or can mean. And so I went to the University of Illinois. One thing I learned from my father was, have a backup plan because, you can injure yourself, your hand, or, it's a job that necessitates both eyes and ears. And, it's a job that you need to be in physically good shape. And if something happens, have a backup plan. So I did attend the University of Illinois, and just to have I had an interest in psychology. So I secured my bachelor's and master's in psychology. And then I took a job after graduation with the Prospect Heights Police Department, which is a small department up here in Chicago. And I was there for a year, and then Park Ridge called, and it was a better fit for me. And so I moved there and my family, and then moved my family into town and had my kids grow up there and really be connected to the community. One of the things my dad taught me was, if you really going to do the job well, you should really become part of the community. And I think that's true. You don't want to be a jailer where you go and you do your work and then go home to some other community. You really are connected with the people that you live and serve with. So spent 24 years in Park Ridge, and then started looking, at what I would do when I retired or moving on. And chief's job, I ultimately ended up as a deputy chief in Park Ridge. And so, I had aspirations to see if I could give it a different level. And Highland Park, I took a number of tests and processes, but Highland Park ultimately hired me in 2018. And I've been here for 5 years now, and it has just been a remarkable experience and journey. It's a phenomenal police department. We have got phenomenal officers. Our city council is great. Our city staff is great. I really feel blessed to be where I'm at right now.
How did you get involved with the association then?
Yeah, so again, being a police officer and working all the different levels and different jobs, and that's a nice thing about law enforcement. There's so much variety, and you can find your niche, whether it's in traffic or if it's investigations or community relations or community policing. And so, as I worked my way through sergeant and lieutenant and commander and ultimately deputy chief, I knew, and I have colleagues and friends that, are chiefs, and they said, really, if you want to expand outside of your police department and look outside into the bigger picture of law enforcement and have an impact, perhaps on a bigger scale, definitely want to get involved with the Illinois Chiefs. And so I didn't know much about the Illinois Chiefs at the time, being I was a deputy chief, but I really wasn't affiliated. And so when I ultimately was asked actually by my current chief at Park Ridge, he was in line to be president, to maybe take on a committee chair position. I jumped at it. I thought, okay, this definitely exposed me to larger issues and law enforcement, and exposed me to networking and just different a lot of different opportunities to decide, would this being a chief be appropriate, or would it be something I'd be interested in. So I my first introduction in 2013 was as chair of the Traffic Safety Committee. So it's one of the many committees that are on, in the association. And boy, it was just a wonderful experience. I got to work with people that I otherwise would never have had the chance to work with. Certainly, if I just was focused on, Park Ridge and really inward looking, it exposed me to officers at all different levels. Folks that were on the committee and working with people throughout the state at a state level on traffic safety related issues. We implemented a number of really interesting programs, statewide initiatives like Rail Safety Week, Speed Awareness Day, and things like that enabled me to, again, travel throughout the state and talk with folks throughout the state, law enforcement, otherwise, and also work with our legislators. So it really was an eye-opening experience for me. I did not know. Truth be told, I thought Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police was a more of a social social group, and that it was more was oriented around just chiefs getting together and meeting and talking about chief things. I did not know that there was so much legislative advocacy that they do, the work that they do, and again, a lot of programming that impacts law enforcement throughout the state. So that's how I got really interested in and maybe running at some point to lead the organization.
So I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, and if you drive 2 hours west or south, it's a completely different area. The state is completely different. But in your organization, talking to other chiefs, how does that help everyone learn new things?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We are a diverse state. I mean, we're a large state with a lot of, you've got clearly very urban areas, and you've got very rural areas and everything in between, different size communities. And I think it's both a challenge for law enforcement in Illinois and for the association, but it also offers, so many opportunities to learn from different folks who are in different positions. And I think that's one of the things that the association continually works on, and it's a work in progress for sure. But it is a focus, and I knew going in my presidency that I did want to speak for and at least hear from people from all across the state. I think the way our state's set up, with the vast majority of our population centers being up in the Northeast, there is a tendency for a lot of representation in the Illinois Chiefs from our area. And so, we've really got to work hard to make sure that we're engaged and stay engaged with folks from Metropolis and, the Quad Cities and all the other areas in the state, because their experiences, while there are some commonalities, certainly in law enforcement, right, we all feel the effects of some of the things, clearly even in recent events, we all feel the effects of some of those things, but they're also very specific issues and things that, are, again, specific to a region. So we have 1,300-ish members, and the job, I feel, of the board and the president is certainly to make sure we're engaging with all of them to the extent we can, that we're hearing. It's not unlike President of the United States. I mean, they've got different states, across the country. So you've really got to put the work in to get face time and be present in those locations that might not be heavily represented by, in the association by membership. So it has definitely been an interesting experience to be able to go to, if you're not familiar, there, while we're the Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police, we have regional associations as well that pretty much cover, there's probably about 25 of them. So for instance, I'm also a member of the Lake County Chiefs. And so we meet monthly and we talk about issues relevant to our area. And then there's, DuPage County Chiefs, there's Southern Illinois Association of Police Chiefs, SIPCA. So there are associations throughout the state. And when you're running for office, traditionally what you try to do is you try to go to those meetings, kind of go on a road show to try to meet as many people, because I don't work clearly with people from SIPCA very, in my role as police chief in Highland Park.
Right.
And I generally work with folks. So you really do want to get outside your walls again and meet with those folks. And so one of the things I've done as president is I've initiated quarterly meetings with the presidents of each of those associations. So, we really didn't have that before. And again, trying to connect us. I'll have a Zoom meeting now quarterly with all the presidents, the 25 presidents from each of those associations, to really talk about the issues that are particular going on in their area, and to hear from other presidents and associations too. So again, it's that sharing of information. So being one large association, we've in the state, I think it's incumbent upon us to really bring everybody together.
So before we started the interview, you talked about the terrible mass shooting in Highland Park this summer. The big thing as police chief, how important was it to make sure your officers were taking care of their mental health during that time?
So absolutely paramount and forefront, on my mind and the mind of our city staff. Unquestionably, we're not the first to have gone through something like that. And so as terrible as it is, we've benefited from those folks that have gone before us. And so if there's any solace in these things and people going through them, they're certainly devastating and traumatic. But the work that's gone before us has better prepared us and put us in a position, and we hope to pass that forward as well. But there are really good systems in place. And again, because of the experiences of other municipalities and jurisdictions, we had a lot of guidance and help. And so I feel really good about where my officers are at this point in time. And I don't know that would be the case, certainly for those jurisdictions that went through these early and didn't have those systems in place. Man, I feel terrible for them, because they were charting the path, but it was at their expense. And so, yes, first and foremost, really making sure that our officers, that they're resilient and able to process it appropriately at the time and when they need to, and that they're able to still perform, their job, and certainly in their private lives and personal lives, that they still are doing well. So it's not something that's, one and done. We're constantly coming up with different ways to help people process it, because people are on different paths and at different times.
What are the things that motivate you?
With respect to just in general, or law enforcement, or
in general?
Yeah. Well, again, I'll drawing upon my dad's experience. I do work every day to make him proud. He's gone, but not far from my mind. And so I'm motivated every day, truly in my work, especially, and as a father, to carry on kind of his legacy, because it was cut short, unfortunately. And so I'm motivated to be the police chief that I would want to work for. That's certainly kind of how I try to position myself, that am I making decisions, that would, as a police officer, I would really like. And so I try to make sure that I'm engaged. And I would say also what truly motivates me at work at this point is I just have a phenomenal group. I have really a great group of police officers and civilian staff that I just would do anything for. They work so hard and try to do everything they can to work above and beyond. And so I'm motivated by the team that I'm leading right now, and I feel privileged for that. I am motivated to make sure people understand that law enforcement is there to do the work that nobody else wants to do, to keep you safe, to run towards that gunfire like I saw on July 4th when everybody else is running away. And it is a challenging and dirty business. It's use of force, whether it's done perfect or not, still looks very ugly. You're using force on another human being to take them into custody, but it's necessary if we're going to have a society where people feel safe and are safe to go about their lives. And so, I really feel strongly about advocating for the men and women in law enforcement, and really working through those perceptions that people have, whether it's from TV or movie, the misperceptions people have about, hey, why didn't you just shoot him in the leg? Those are just, things that people feel that aren't based in reality, because it impacts law enforcement. This last incident, I know our folks are all wearing it. We're all in the business, and while I know my officers would never do that, they're going to now wear that for those officers, and that's a unique thing. We don't see protests in front of doctors' offices, or if a teacher is arrested for something, we don't vilify the entire profession. For some reason, law enforcement, we tend to, and we're the focus of a lot of that. So I'm motivated to try to stem that tide.
So, as president of the Illinois Chiefs of Police Association, where do you want to see the organization in the next 3 to 5 years?
I think we are on a great path and continue to make improvements and grow. I really, really do. So in my time since 2013, I've seen a lot of new folks getting involved. We're trying to bring on the next generation of police leaders, and we've been very successful getting new people to get on board, even at the lower levels, like a deputy chief, commander, sergeants, even. So we're getting people involved earlier, so that, like me, maybe I got in a little too late. I could have maybe contributed more earlier on a committee or something like that. I do believe that the association is the preeminent, law enforcement association in the state. And I think that the work that we do legislatively with our advocacy for our profession, the training that we do and offer throughout the state, and again, like I said, the partnerships that we've built with private organizations and companies, I really feel that we are positioned to weather whatever potential issues might come up, and we already have with respect to COVID. I think we worked very, very well as an association to get information out and help our members work through that. 2020, the incident with George Floyd, that was a very challenging time for law enforcement, and I know that we worked with our legislators and our public and our membership to try to navigate that and find the best possible outcome for everybody involved. And certainly as we go forward, as incidents like the one that recently happened, happen from time to time, I think we're in a good position because we've worked, I believe, to establish credibility with our legislators that we are committed to making, improvements in public safety and law enforcement. But we're also, we also hope that they'll understand that we are the subject matter experts, and whether they're in agreement or not, there's certain things that we can share with them about the realities of if they want to change a certain law. And so a perfect example was, recently they wanted to change a class B and C misdemeanor to just where you would sign your name and not be arrested or taken into custody. And they really didn't talk with us during that process. And so the reality of that means, because they didn't know, but we do, trespassing is a class B misdemeanor, meaning if somebody's on your property and now all I do is have them sign a ticket, how do I remove them? So little things like that. And I do think that as an association, we've gone really far in trying to establish our credibility with our legislators so that they know we're not just dug in, and that we're willing and certainly want the same kind of change that they want, but we want to do it in a really thoughtful way that doesn't have unintended consequences. So we've developed a strong working relationship with our legislators, and I think that's going to carry us through the next couple of years. As you see nationally, they're calling for new laws. So absent that, we would not, I think, be in a good position in the state of Illinois with respect to law enforcement. But because of the hard work, and we spend a lot of time on it, building those relationships with our legislators, and we go down and meet with them regularly. We've got a legislative committee that talks frequently with the sponsors of bills, and our chiefs are getting more engaged where they're reaching out to their legislators. So we're building those things, that capacity. So I think we're positioned very, very well in Illinois with respect to the Chiefs Association to take us through the upcoming challenges that we can see that are already kind of there. And I'm encouraged by, again, the participation statewide, that more and more people getting involved, because we need people to get involved.